Hello, dear architects of systems. I continue the practice series for systems architect and program stabilization lead. Today, we will continue with the human side of systems, behavior, dynamics, and structural signals. How the architect stabilizer reads the human field of the system. Why this matters for the role? At system level, problems are rarely purely structural or purely interpersonal. Architectures and behavior continuously shape each other. Formal design may appear sound while the lived system is already unstable. Human behavior often shows system stress earlier than formal reporting does. The architect stabilizer must read not only structure but also the behavioral field surrounding it. If you do not read the human field, you will misread the system. The architect must read two systems at once. First, the formal system. Its roles, governance, decision pathways, ownership structures, reporting lines, official interfaces. And the second, the lift system. Trust patterns, fear zones, silence zones, informal influence routines, habitual workarounds, behavioral norms under pressure. Instability often sits in the gap between the formal system and the lived one. Human psychology is not peripheral. Within organizations, behavior is shaped by core human conditions. Safety. Is it safe to speak openly, raise risk, challenge assumptions, or state limitation? Control. What can I influence, stabilize, protect, or still manage? Fairness. Is responsibility, risk, and recognition distributed credibly? Status. How this affect authority, visibility, relevance, and position? Belonging. Where is trust located? And whose logic defines the norm? Meaning, does the effort still connect to purpose? The role is not to judge these conditions, but to observe how the system is shaping them. How to read safety in the system? Watch for risk being raised late rather than early. People speaking more openly after meetings than inside them. Serious issues described in softened language. Questions being replaced by careful statements. Visible hesitation before naming structural concerns. Reliance on private channels for difficult truths. Interpretation. Low safety often produces delayed clarity. Silence does not mean agreement. Late risk often means early discomfort was already present. How to read status, control, and belonging. Watch for over defense of territory, narrative, or ownership, selective visibility of success, and diffusion of failure, microcontrol in uncertain areas, reluctance to commit to shared decision routines, informal pre alignment within trusted subgroups, repeated alignment to hierarchy or over logic, interpretation. Status sensitivity shapes what can be said and by whom. Control seeking often rises where structure is weak. Belonging patterns often explain real alignment better than formal charts do. The real system is often organized around trust, exposure, and interpretive power. What to look for in the lift system? Where are decisions truly made? Which meetings are real mechanisms and which are rituals? Who influences outcomes without formal authority? Who seeks risk but remains silent? who repeatedly translates between parts of the organization. Where does declared agreement fail to produce aligned execution? Interpretation, the lived system, reveals how the organization actually moves. If the formal structure does not explain outcomes, the real operating logic sits elsewhere. The system should be read where consequences occur, not where structure claims it occurs. What pressure reveals? Under pressure, behavior becomes less masked, and more patterned. Watch for narrowing of horizon, defensive communication, territorial protection, escalation as a normal routine, heroic compensation by a few strong individuals. Interpretation, narrowing horizon signals loss of integrative capacity. Defensive behavior signals declining psychological openness. Territorially, signals weak coordination architecture. Frequent escalation signals decision road failure. Heroic signals that the system is borrowing stability from its people. Pressure does not create the pattern, it reveals the system's underlying condition. When the system shifts load onto people, watch for a small number of people constantly absorbing contradictions, informal workarounds holding together formal gaps, decisions moving only when certain individuals intervene, overfunctioning by strong operators and under ownership elsewhere, exhaustion concealed as commitment. Interpretation, the system is no longer carrying its own load coherently. Human effort is compensating for architectural weakness. This may look adaptive in the short term, but it is structurally unstable. Where stability depends on exceptional individuals, the architecture is already under strain. Read behavior diagnostically, not morally. Avoid premature labels resistant, political, difficult, passive, territorial, uncooperative. Ask instead what condition is producing this behavior? What uncertainty it is responding to? What structural ambiguity is protecting against? What does the system make costly here? Truth, ownership, disagreement, or clarity? Do not label behavior before reading the architecture that produces it. Healthy and unhealthy dynamics. In a healthier system, disagreement is possible without immediate status threat. Decisions are traceable. Risk appears early. Ownership remains stable. Coordination is not dependent on one person. Trust comes from predictability, not personality alone. In a less healthy system, conversation become more careful, but not more clear. Alignment is declared but not shared. Accountability drifts. Energy is consumed by interpretation and self protection. Visibility is confused with value. Coherence depends on heroic effort. Systems rarely lose coherence through one event. They lose it through repeated small distortion in interaction. Watch for them. Patterns the architect should watch. Late risk signaling. Risk is seen early, but raised late. Agreement without alignment. Consensus is verbal, but execution diverges. Clean reporting, messy reality. Documents appear coherent while lived conditions do not. over-articulation, many words, little decision consequence, repeated translation dependency. The same individuals repeatedly bridge gaps between functions. Energy asymmetry. Some areas are overloaded while others remain disengaged. Patterns matter more than isolated incidents. What the architect must ultimately see, where the formal system and lived systems diverge, where behavior is compensating for weak architecture, where silence, caution, or overactivity are carrying system meaning, where instability is behavioral before it is structural on paper, where stabilization must address both design and human conditions. The human field is not separate from the system. It is one of the clearest ways the system becomes visible. Core message: human behavior is not noise around the system. It is part of how the system actually lives. Silence, defensiveness, over control, side routines, side roads, and heroics are all forms of data. The architect stabilizer must read this as system signals. Strong systems reduce destructive behavioral amplitude. Weak systems force people to compensate for structural gaps. To stabilize the system, you must understand what people are being required to carry for it. The end of today's discussion. You may subscribe and push the notification bell if you are interested to see further series. But as I always say, I don't insist. It's purely depend on your interest in the subject matter. I thank you for your attention and have a nice day and goodbye.